basketball guys, we have news. Let's go to more news from the Golden State Warriors, but before that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. After the departure of two stars, Klay Thompson and Chris Paul, it was impossible to imagine how the Warriors would renew themselves, but with several talented young people led by the genius Stephen Curry, the Warriors are having a good season. Bringing in another young star to help Stephen Curry would be great. Bombastic trade rumors, Warriors make big trade with Hornets and conquista LaMelo Ball. The Golden State Warriors have a chance to undo a huge mistake they made in the 2020 NBA draft. As the Warriors figure out how to trade for another superstar to pair with Stephen Curry before it's too late, they're likely still kicking themselves for not drafting LaMelo Ball at number 2 overall in the 2020 draft. After Anthony Edwards went number 1 overall to the Minnesota Timberwolves, Golden State selected James Wiseman with the number 2 pick. Ball fell to the Charlotte Hornets at number 3. Ball and Curry would have been explosive, no doubt. It's even possible that drafting Ball would have allowed the Warriors to move Klay Thompson earlier. Alas, Golden State drafted Wiseman and traded him to the Detroit Pistons 32 months later. But what if the Warriors could find a way to trade for LaMelo, undoing their terrible mistake? It sounds like an unlikely scenario, mostly because the Hornets are planning to build completely around Ball and probably wouldn't trade him under any circumstances, although he's been linked to the Lakers. On the other hand, perhaps Charlotte could be tempted with multiple first-round picks, especially given Ball's injury history and average, at best, defense. Might the Hornets decide to double down on their rebuild by snagging multiple first-rounders from Golden State, as well as Jonathan Kuminga? A Kuminga-Brandon Miller pairing would set Charlotte up on the wing for the next decade or more, much like the defending champion Boston Celtics set themselves up a few years back by drafting both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. If the Hornets are in the business of stacking first-round picks, Golden State should give them a call and see how many it will take, plus Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins, to pry away LaMelo. Let's face it, LaMelo was born to play in Golden State and be a splash brother, and Curry deserves another elite running mate. The entertainment factor would be off the charts. Charlotte could slide Trey Mann into a starting role and know that they are setting themselves up for a bountiful run of drafts in the next few years. Will Jonathan Kuminga be a starter for the Warriors? In sports, there are always curious phenomenons. The way momentum shifts and how it can affect performance. The way playing at home gives teams an advantage. Even the idea of switching shoes in the locker room after a rough half to shift the energy. That's why the Golden State Warriors can only scratch their heads at Jonathan Kuminga now playing better coming off the bench than with the starters. Can Warriors play to Jonathan Kuminga's strengths as starter? This season, the Warriors are 3-0 since Kuminga was moved to the bench, even with Stephen Curry out each of those games. Last season, that was far from the case. The Warriors were 13-15 when Kuminga came off the bench versus 27-19 when he started. There are caveats, of course. 2 of Golden State's wins have come against the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans were missing starting point guard DeJounte Murray in their first matchup with the Warriors. In their rematch, they were missing Murray, starting shooting guard C.J. McCollum, and starting forward Herb Jones. When they defeated the Houston Rockets, an up-and-coming team, it took an overtime period. However, Kuminga's play wasn't necessarily dependent upon the opponent, he simply played better. He looked more comfortable. He finished better. The former top 10 pick was even more efficient from outside. In the first 3 games of the season, Kuminga averaged 8.0 points in 19.7 minutes per game, shooting 33.3% from the floor and 11.1% from three-point range. Golden State looked as out of sorts as he did, going winless in this stretch. In his last 3 games, Kuminga has averaged 18.7 points in 27.3 minutes per game, shooting 51.4% from the field and 42.9% from deep. Square peg, round hole. Kuminga's touch was definitely off to start the season, but there's far more to his early struggles. In the first 3 games of the Warriors season, he was a stretch forward. There are multiple ways he could have played off of his teammates in that role. However, the simplest way was to take catch-and-shoot threes, many of which would presumably be open. To put it bluntly, Kuminga bombed in those performances. After 3 games, he was 1-9 from deep. To make matters worse, he had only taken 24 total field goal attempts, meaning 37.5% of his shots came from beyond the arc. It's no wonder why he was only averaging 8.0 points per game. When Curry exited the lineup with a sprained ankle, Warriors head coach Steve Kerr had the option to make Kuminga the focal point of his offense. At the time, Andrew Wiggins was sidelined as well. It seemed like an ideal time to get more out of a player who had been discussed like a future cornerstone. Yet, Kerr decided to lean on the trio of Buddy Hield, Brandon Podziemski, and Moses Moody. The latter 2 have started in each of the last 3 games. On the one hand, this was done to improve their spacing. Kerr, the mastermind behind the Warriors' vaunted offensive scheme, also seems more comfortable running a system that's built around movement and three-point shooting. Meanwhile, Kuminga likes to ISO more than spot up. He likes to attack the rim more than float around the arc. Frankly, he's just not the type of player that truly fits the Warriors' agenda. Wiggins, who had to dramatically alter his shot profile after being traded to Golden State, is another example of that. Consider that with the Warriors, 36.7% of Wiggins' shot attempts have been threes. With the Minnesota Timberwolves, his prior team, just 21.5% of his field goal attempts were three-pointers. Unlike, say, Kevin Durant, who won 2 Finals MVP awards with Golden State, Kuminga doesn't have enough cachet to make Kerr conform to him though. This begs the question of whether Kuminga will ever truly thrive with the Warriors in a starting role. That being said, unless Golden State acquires a starting caliber stretch center or Draymond Green becomes a player teams decide they have to guard beyond the arc, it's hard to have faith that he will. That's not a knock on him, it's just how the cookie has crumbled. As previously mentioned, sports are full of strange occurrences. An all-star caliber player looking better, or worse, depending on their situation, is just one of them. Fortunately for Kuminga, he may land somewhere where he's more appreciated when he becomes a restricted free agent next summer. Draymond Green sends a message to Kuminga. Green doesn't want Kuminga to get too comfortable leaving the Pine, however. As impressive as he has been in transition, exploiting mismatches in the midcourt and checking multiple positions defensively, Golden State's veteran leader also believes that Kuminga's improvement in play lately is mainly rooted in the 22-year-old's maturity. I don't want him to love coming off the bench. He believes he is a superstar. I believe he can be a superstar, Green said of Kuminga after Saturday's game. And so as long as you believe that, you shouldn't be okay with coming off the bench. But how you respond is important. You can respond with bad humor, or you can just do what you can do to help the team win and be great, and that's what he's doing. So we shouldn't just talk about his game, but we should talk about his maturity, because last year he wouldn't have coped as well, Green continued. But another year of growth and maturity, he's taking it in stride and has had his 3 best games so far this season. Is Jonathan Kuminga at his best coming off the bench for the Warriors? Golden State Warriors forward Jonathan Kuminga, 0-0, reacts to a call from an official during the first half against the San Antonio Spurs at Frost Bank Center. Images by Scott Wachter remain. Kuminga is averaging 18.7 points, 4.3 rebounds, 2 assists and 1 steal as a reserve, shooting 51.4% overall and 42.9% on 2.3 three-point attempts per game, numbers much better than those who managed in the first 3 games of the season as a starter. He's been great. This is the 3rd game in a row he's come off the bench and these were his 3 best games, Kerr said of Kuminga at Saturday's post-game podium. I think the way he responded to a role change is perfect. that's what we hope. The professionalism, the strength he brought, coming off the bench and playing the way he has done is a great sign of growth. I couldn't be more proud of JK.